Океј, продолжуваме понатаму. Следен го имаме Симон Васев, кој што е арт дизајнер, 2D арт дизајнер во Blacksea Games. Симеон, добар ден.
Добар ден.
Unmute.
Yeah, unmute.
Yes.
So,
we'll speak in English with you. I know, it's better.
Yeah.
How are you?
Easier for everyone. Well, I'm pretty good. How are you?
Yeah, fine. We are getting deep into the start of the MAGDA's one-up GameDev convention.
Yeah, I listened to the previous lecture. It was pretty good.
Yeah. I also it was pretty inspiring, even for people that are not into the UI, but all the mindset and the thinking of the working into that side of development on AAA games it's always mesmerizing to be heard. Are you ready with your presentation?
Excuse me?
Are you ready for your presentation?
Yeah, it's more of a demonstration, actually.
Of demonstration, yeah, of course. Yeah. Daniela, do you have any questions?
No, just to say hello and we can start.
Of course. Simon, the floor is, of course, yours.
Awesome. Let me just stream my screen here. And in fact, we're keeping the camera on. Screw it. So give me a second.
I knew it.
All right. And, well, a little bit of background, by the way. As you heard, my name is Simon Vasiv. I work as a 2D artist at Blacksea Games. And I'll be demonstrating some character art right here. I gave myself a subject off screen, backstage. I'll be making a pirate robot. It's basically a combination where it's gonna be, because most of character design and most of design in general is combining elements that you've previously seen before. As we know, original ideas are not exactly original ideas. All of them derive from something that has been invented previously. So combining shapes and combining designs that already exist is what creates new and exciting things. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to start the way every character design should start, and I've made this here silhouette, which is literally, as you can see, just if I zoom in here, it's pretty basic. It literally has the brush strokes, you can see them. It just has the general, proportions of a human being. You can tell that's a man, but I'm going to be turning that into a machine. It's not going to be a man by the end of this. So let's see how this goes. Basically, on the thumbnail stage or the silhouette stage, you'd have to make more of these. Like I'm just going to go for one because we're kind of short on time. And I'm going to show you the quick version of what goes on in just making up a character from scratch. So basically, this is not an interesting shape to begin with. It's literally just the most generic thing you can possibly look at. So I have just a rough idea in my head of what I want the design to look like, and I'm going to give it a shot. So basically, first things first, to show that this is going to be a machine, we're going to have to make it look like the limbs are not exactly entirely filled. There's holes in between, and machines are efficient in that way where you definitely don't need to fill up the entire space to make it look like it's working, it's functional, There's just a bunch of wires in places where we humans have, skin and bones and a full structure or something. But yeah, if this was man-made, it's been optimized so it doesn't fill up a lot of space and it only does the necessary things. So first things first, when I'm making a robot, I always start messing with the silhouette like this. And in this case, let's say he keeps the head. Let's say the head stays in a fairly human shape, but let's say we give him one eye, for example. You know how pirates, they're sometimes in the legends they have one eye because the other one is covered up by an eye patch. And I'm going to stick with the idea, but instead I'm just going to give him one single eye so he doesn't have a second one to begin with. And let's see what else. So again, I'm going to be slimming up the silhouette a bit because we don't need all of this. This is too much. Quite possibly he will have a large pirate coat though, so it will be hanging off this way. Something like this, actually. As you can see, this is all very rough. Literally, the brush strokes aren't as calculated and careful as they should be, because this is how all designs start. You can rush into it. You don't really have to slow down and pay attention to every single line and stuff like that. Let's see. These pirate coats, they usually have also a I don't know what it's called. Like, what exactly do you call the collar? It's a collar. Like a very, very large type collar that covers up most of the neck. And let's say he's gonna have a bandana on, so maybe we can even give him, the knot from the bandana behind him. And let's see. Now I get to play around with the arms. So basically, I choose where I put less and where I put more of these plates. They're going to be metal plates by the end of this, until the design starts looking more and more like a machine. Same goes for this arm. We can actually say goodbye to symmetry here, because, by the way, this is a very important principle in basic design, is that asymmetrical designs are way more interesting to the eye. So say I might give him at some point a belt that goes like this all the way through the figure, diagonally, so that it breaks up the shape, where it's no longer, the left side is no longer the same as the right. Same not just in characters, same in interface, same in environments, any kind of shape that you break up the symmetry in instantly becomes more interesting to look at, catches the eye, and is a real focal point at this point. So anyway, let's see. Human legs. Nope, that won't do. All right, I'm going to be putting some type of mechanism where, how most joints in machines usually have like a round kind of joint where it makes it easier for things to just move and be constricted in a way also. Like there's a limit to the round joint depending on where it is. So the knees are probably going to be something like this. I'll show you what I mean a bit when I start adding the details. But for now we're just fiddling with the silhouette. So here we go again. I'm going to break the symmetry. You know what? This side is probably going to have one of those captain's coat type shoulder pieces. Again, I have to, I guess, make it happen to show you what I mean. But let's carry on here. On the other side is just going to be metal plates like this. And you know what? Maybe I don't like that hand in that exact position. We can always move things around. We have to use all tools at our disposal. This is the lasso tool, and I'm literally just gonna, this is basic Adobe Photoshop stuff, by the way. Just moving it around slightly, changing the angle, because I may want to have him hold a weapon of some kind. And for the weapon, right now I'm just gonna put a big line. That's gonna be it. We'll deal with that later. It's not as important currently. And right around here is also a good point to kind of start adding things that you would. It's a secondary detail, even though it's the silhouette. But here's what I'm thinking: pirates, they sometimes have a hook for a hand, and what I could do, I always could just take away his arm and put, like a giant kind of hook thing. But that's been done. That's been done a bunch of times. So how about this? What if it sticks out of the arm? You know, this is a machine, you can put attachments on it. All kinds of things can be attached to the main body. So basically, I'm gonna put a hook over here, see if that works, you know. So basically, he has both a hook and his arm. You know, he gets the best of both worlds, in a way. And by all means, probably this sword is gonna have a sheath somewhere around here. I could have added that later, but you know, just making sure we're thorough here. And please excuse some of the silent parts, by the way. I will be concentrating for bits on the drawing, so I won't be blabbing throughout the entire process, but you know, I'll try to talk as much as I can about whatever I think about during this whole thing. Head might be a little too tilted here, so I'll tilt it backwards. Again, using the lasso tool to adjust it and then just nudging it backwards. The whole thing maybe needs to be skewed a bit. And should be a bit shorter. Yeah, I like it this way better. So, let's say we have at this point a general idea of what this looks like. I'm adding this fatter sleeve. I have something in the back of my mind. I'll tell you all about it when we get there. And yeah, I think I'm just about ready to call the silhouette done at this point. You know, I think it's we've broken it up enough. Like there's this asymmetry here. You know, this element to the right that won't be copied around here. So the coat, let's say it's been ripped, or maybe it's gonna stop. You know, it's gonna end right here or something on this side, and then it's gonna continue all the way down, so that we have this nice breaking up of the shape, and it doesn't become boring for the viewer. Maybe I'll make this guy slightly bigger. Let's see. At any point, you can adjust the size of your canvas. So that's what I'm going to do right now, just slightly, so I have enough room for all of this. Make him bigger. And by the way, when I start adding the big details, I'll quite possibly just change the whole canvas size, like grand changes. We're talking, I'm going to scale it up maybe 2 or 3 times just to have enough room to zoom in. Oh, you know, actually it's pretty big right now. We're at 50%. Here's 100. So you know what? Maybe we keep it until a certain point. We'll see. Anyway, keep going here. So yeah, as I said, let's say we're pretty much done with this part, and we just move on to the next step. So usually what I do right now for the next step of this is I'm going to add light to this. I'm going to copy the layer. That's Control J or Command J if you're using Apple or Mac, I mean. But basically, you make a copy of the layer, and with holding Alt, you can mask it down by the other layer. So at this point, I can draw in here, and you know, not be worried about my lines going outside of the shape. Basically, they're locked in, and they're staying this way. So what I have here on this menu is a bunch of tool presets, and I have one named light. So you don't really need to have the preset because I've already made it, but here's what it literally is. It's a round, soft brush, you know, big size, generally. It's set on color dodge mode. That's a blending mode that makes light shine through more and appear way more vivid than usual. And then the opacity is set on 14% or something low. Just generally keep it low, you know, and you're not gonna go wrong, because color dodge is a pretty strong instrument to begin with. So the more times I, you know, press on one spot, the brighter it's gonna get, and pretty quickly you can burn out the photo. You can make the whole thing flare a little too much and become too bright. We don't want that. Right, so we're just gonna keep it like this. And I do a light pass. I'm gonna do a light pass right now. Basically, I'm gonna be worried about the stuff that's hit by light. And I'm gonna go for a general, top-down kind of lighting, because with almost all scenes, we probably have the light source on top. It's a light somewhere, either the light or the sun itself. Again, you can have horror games where, let's say, the lighting is, some kind of red blinking alert light that's positioned way down low, giving you kind of a creepy feeling, like you don't want to be there, you have to get out right now. So that's very important to notate. But generally, when we're creating something in order to present it to an art director, and it's a design for a character that we've just started, we're gonna want the best lighting to show off everything the character has, right? So we're not gonna put him in a dark room on a dark background and have the character be dark as well. We're gonna have his silhouette clearly red. That's why I put him on a light background and he's a dark silhouette. And the same goes for the lighting. We're gonna have lighting that showcases everything he has in a way that doesn't leave anything unsaid, for him. Because that's what we're doing. We're describing. Basically, that's what the concept artist does. Describing something that quite possibly the 3D artist takes after that, and he's gonna start modeling. So, that's important. And just really general stuff here. Basically, I'm shining lights over his shoulders and head. Just a little bit off his face as well. Just deciding where this coat is gonna end, really. And then, yeah, kind of like that, just like we talked about. We're gonna end it right here. And I'm gonna do a few of those passes, by the way. Like, I go light once, and then we're gonna do a darkness pass after this. By the way, here's what I was thinking about the leg. We can always go back and fix that up a bit. Straight line here, ending with, something like a stub. Basically, I wanted to give him the typical pirate peg leg. The pirates have, they're also notorious in some legends for having only one leg, and the other one is definitely a little stub with no foot and no toes, no nothing. I'm gonna try and do the same thing here, only for one of his legs, just to show off, make sure everyone knows he's a pirate if it's not already apparent from the coat and the hook and everything. And yeah, back to the light layer. Let's say that's plenty. I don't know if I can add anything more here until I start adding the darkness. So next I'm gonna copy this layer as well. I'm gonna mask it up with the same technique. And I also have a shadow layer. A shadow tool at my disposal. That's literally just the same. It's a very big brush. It's very soft and round. And instead of color dodge, we put it on color burn this time. So it's gonna literally make shadows darker every time I press on the canvas. Zoom in a little bit here so I can show you what I mean. And again, the lighting for objects in general, if they're placed in very neutral lighting conditions, is gonna start dark around the edges. So I'm gonna give his edge dark feel in general, and then going back to the silhouette here, I could always also remove this part from the arm, basically just thinking how I make him look more and more like a machine. And now we're going back to the darkness layer. I'm gonna keep switching back and forth between these because, sometimes changes need to be applied. Also, in real life situations while you're making this, you may have a point where you stand up, you leave, you go eat, or, just generally walk outside for a bit because you've been cramped up inside for far too long. You come back, you get a fresh look at your design, and you realize it's not going the way you want it, and you start making changes right away. A fresh eye on something is very important every time, because sometimes you could get a little bit carried away into something that you can then decide you don't need. In this case, of course, I'm not going to stand up and leave. That would be foolish. We're just going to keep going. Just letting you know that, design, because it's extremely visual, it has to strike from the first acquaintance. So the time you first see it, is the most memorable. And you're kind of replicating that moment when you leave the room or you do something else, you come back, right? You're kind of, again, tricking yourself into seeing your design for the first time. And that can be pretty important in cases. So around this point, after I've added the shadows, I decide I maybe want to do some contour work to actually showcase what I mean by all these designs. So, big pirate coat, huh? You know what? Yeah, we can actually lock it down. We can close it up. He doesn't have to be exposed. It can definitely be closed down, so we can at least show the way that these things close down. You've seen pirate coats before. They literally have like these belts that go from side to side, to interlock the two halves in front of this very huge jacket, so to speak. And we're gonna want the same thing for our character. The faces are mostly actually really important. The face is basically, I'm gonna flatten all these, by the way. I don't need to have them on layers anymore. At this point, I'm gonna have the whole thing on one layer, and I'm gonna give him the bandana that I talked about earlier. And perhaps a meaner design. And this is where we really start to define shape, or at least me. This is one of many processes, one of many ways someone can do something like this, but I find mine to be extremely effective. Basically, it's just like you would see in comic books. The shading in comic books, if you've noticed, it's extremely. If we ignore the color, if we just look at the ink, it's black and white. There's no gray, and if there's gray, it's probably like strokes, but it's still pretty, high contrast between light and dark, and you can't mistake the two. So basically, we're gonna cut some really sharp edges into this thing and make sure we know exactly where it's gonna be light and where it's gonna be dark. Here I'm gonna add a bunch of these elements. This is the captain's coat kind of shoulder piece that I was talking about, which let's try and make it good. I'm by the way constantly checking back and forth with my screens. This is one of the, I don't know if it's a curse or a gift, working in two screens. At least one of them isn't calibrated, and when I look back at this streaming platform, I can at least see what my design looks like on my lighter screen, because I have two screens. One of them is lighter, one of them is darker. And, sometimes I get caught up drawing on the darker screen because that's my tablet. My second screen is my tablet. And when, you've been drawing something in the dark, on the dark screen for so long, and then you realize, wait a second, this shadow isn't, you look at it on the light screen, you go, wow, the shadows aren't at all what I pictured them like, You think you've hidden something in shadow, but literally the light screen shows everything, and it shows everything pop up. And you're like, wow, I haven't done any shading at all at this point. So sometimes, what I'll do is, I'm hitting Control L, by the way. What I'll do is I'll, regulate the levels of something. So I'm gonna make this extremely darker for this case. And now it looks good on both screens. Always check back and forth. If you don't have a second screen, it's always also very healthy to send it over to your phone. You know, it's quite easy nowadays to find a platform where you can send any piece of artwork real quick to your mobile device and just check it. And you know, most phones, or actually should I say all phones, have calibrated screens, so there you can definitely see what it's going to look like for someone viewing it via web browser or PC or whatever, who has their screen calibrated. So you know, there's a little trick for you. Like I said, steel plates here. We're gonna keep this fairly machine-like. And these belts, you know, sometimes they I mean, we could do a design where it goes like this, but I think I'm gonna go for something even more bold and just make them circles. You know, nice and big. You can't mistake them for anything else. Put in some neck pieces. Now a bunch of highlights. You know, this might be a good time to like showcase exactly what shines and where and how much. Yeah, I'm gonna tie this this sleeve off over here, and right under it we're gonna start seeing the machine part. And you know, this is a place where we can add some cool designs. You know, like let's say this hook, we know it's gonna be coming in from somewhere, right? So we gotta start thinking about how it goes into the arm, you know, and what the hole for this might look like if it even retracts backwards. You know, if it goes inside, back inside, switches with another tool, then comes back out. You know, that'd be pretty cool actually. But then you have to design, you know, the rest of the tools, obviously, which is not a problem. That's actually even more fun than designing one single weapon for his right arm. So now I'm going to be differentiating between these plates. Basically, machines, they'll have areas where there's a large plate covering something, and then, you know, smaller detailed areas where it's a smaller plate. This will keep it a round joint as well, and, you know, now breaking up the smaller parts of the silhouette, because, you know, over here, let's say under the plate, there's going to be all these small details like tiny little rivets and gears and stuff like that. Some of the machine parts, you know, actually showing and not being covered up by whatever this is, you know, the plate of armor in a way that robots have sometimes. And at this point, you know, I'm not even worried about exactly which brush I'm using because this is still a very chaotic stage. I'm just gonna bunch up the cloth here. Make sure that you can read from a distance that this thing has, you know, been bent by the form and is not running straight down completely. And, you know, we're gonna tie them up with a belt, of course. not just one belt, because if we want an interesting pirate design, maybe we put a few belts on there. And you know, this one, I'm putting this one over here to the side, one, to break the silhouette, you know, I mean, not the silhouette in this case, it's to break the symmetry of the design. And then again, to, you know, to connect it to the sword sheath coming back here. So it's a good thing we had that from the silhouette. I almost said I was going to add it later, but I guess I don't need to. And yeah, 3 belts. How about that? You know, let's keep it 3 belts. Not bad. So like I said, I'm going to end the code here. Maybe he cut it off. Maybe whoever made him cut it off, but maybe it's easier for him to run that way. Maybe he does a little kick attack with his leg. We don't know. We're just guessing here at this point. But yeah, it's very important to make a story, by the way, just like with this little hook design that I put here. It's here as one of a few, you know. Maybe he really does put it back. I'm just going to give it a little bit more room to be retracted back into the arm. Now, again, here, I'm going to put like a round joint, but this one's facing more towards us, so it's probably not going to leave a hole through the silhouette. And you know, at this point, I really do mix up the painting styles, because most painters will go, no, you have to start from, you know, spots and blurry lines and then just slowly build up towards the detail. But me, I like to add the contour. It's basically, you know, some people say it's a crutch, some people say it's like, you know, something that should help you if you don't know exactly how to do it. But besides the crutch, it's also a very useful tool. Like, nothing will describe these joints right here that I'm making as quick as just drawing them in, you know, with a line. So sometimes it's a very fast way of working. I'm not just differentiating light from black, I'm also giving, you know, a bunch of lines just as design, which reminds me, I should probably put some sort of design here on one of his shoulders. So we're probably gonna have this like that, or something. Yeah, it's pretty all right, I'd say. Maybe this glows. Yeah, let's say it glows. So this is a belt after all. I don't know why I left it without a buckle, but you know, let's go back and just, there are a few simple lines, and it's a belt buckle, you know. And you know, since he doesn't have a sleeve, we can actually describe how this thing has been ripped off. So we're just gonna give him, again, this is small, just silhouette tweaking, but you know, gives us more of an idea where the clothing ends and where the machine starts. But yeah, at this point, I'm just drawing, you know. Of course, there's a little bit of design work involved, but after I've laid down the initial things that I want in here, I can sort of just put a few more joints in here and relax into the detail stage. And we'll get to that a little bit later. Now, at this point, maybe I'm just going to give him a pass where I resize a bunch of things that I'm not quite sure are big enough. So I'm going to use the warp tool, and Control H hides your selection so you can just easily, you know, look at your designs without the grid on top. But you know, we can always Control H again and check that, how much we've twisted it, but it looks good. Because yeah, I want the hook to be a little bit more prominent in the design. It might be a little too thin, so let's just widen this out a bit. Better. Made the whole design wider. And again, this is not the super clean version that will, you know, show up in the art book or in the in-game Wikipedia or something. It's basically the design language that we're trying to sketch out for the character himself. Now, if this gets approved by the art director, you just bring it on up, maybe even start the drawing from scratch and, you know, apply a much, much heavier detail stage than what I'm going to demonstrate. So this is just in case you probably need to make like 3 or 4 of these so you can show it to your art director, because you know, the game industry likes to work with iterations, with different versions of something. So if I'm making a robot pirate, like in this case, it's probably best to show your art director 4 robot pirates, and you know, he picks one. Either he picks one or he picks parts of each and combines them all into his favorite one, which you have then to go back and make, you know, based on whatever he told you. Also, it would probably be pretty good to show your art director whatever you've done in full color. So, you know, I'm not going to be showing you the color stage right now. This is basically my process where I do like to keep it black and white because it's so much easier to control the different surfaces and, you know, how much of what you show. And then Of course, later we always reach the color stage regardless, but at least it's a bit easier after I've mapped out, you know, the main contrasts that I need for my design. Just giving him a little bit of a shadow. Not going to tweak that too much. Maybe I come back to it later. By the way, there's a bunch of angles that are kind of difficult sometimes to handle. So you have the R key on your keyboard. Usually in Adobe Photoshop, that's gonna, you know, turn your cursor into this kind of icon, and you can turn the canvas whichever way you choose. That makes it very easy to adjust it so that your hand doesn't struggle with, say, these edge definings here that I started making but realized I can't make sharp enough because it was at a difficult angle. And basically, right now, it's not too difficult to make, you know. And this is another quiet moment. I apologize. Sometimes you can't do both. Yeah, this will be the point where I start adding kind of like patterns or, you know, different shadings of the clothing and some of the metal pieces that we have. In this case, right after I put these two lines down, I'm going to select all of this with my lasso tool. Control U opens the hue saturation panel, and from then on adjust just how dark we want these to be. It can be lighter as well, but you know, let's go darker. And that's all right. I notice I've neglected the sword design we have here. So you know what? Let's go in there and maybe add something. So you know, some of those pirate swords, they have the cool little twists on them. This is a rapier, basically. That's the type of weapon that I'm going for. It's going to be a kind of rapier because it's also in a fantasy setting, or sci-fi in this case with the robot. But let's add a machine element to it. Like, let's say around here, this handle starts behaving more like a gear, you know, like something you'd see in the smallest details of the robot himself. And that's already giving us a little bit more of a machine look. You know, it's all about design language. You gotta, if you've established a point, you have to have it show in every part of your drawing. You can't just mention something once and then be done with it. There's a lot of copy paste going on, usually. So the peg leg, let's see how that goes. The straight line is a shading up all the way to the bottom here. And at this point, you know, a long time ago, actually, we ditched the part of the drawing where I go from a light brush to a dark brush. Now I'm literally just color picking off of my own canvas, you know, just things that have already been laid down. That's the range in which I'm staying. This is my darkest dark. It's not full black. Never go full black, by the way. Going full black is a total mistake in most design, unless you know it's clearly stated that something has to be pitch black. But usually it doesn't let you define as much if you reach the darkest black shadows. You can't spot details that you've had in these shadows, and you can go too far. It's very easy to go too far with black. You can overdo it. Same goes with light. Of course, you shouldn't use full white. 100% white would be pretty bad, because when you use it once, you know you've defined that that's your brightest shine. Say if I use full white for the eye here, right, and that's a shine that looks all right, you know, on the eyeball. But then, you know, maybe I'm making this lighter. I'm gonna go back after I do this, but if I make this lighter and then I decide, you know what, I want it to be even lighter, and so on and so on, and at some point your painting starts to look like this, you know, overly white. You can't go overboard with that, because you're losing the balance. Every material in here is different. Not right now, not in the sketch, no, but in some of the finished designs, basically you're gonna have, see around here we have cloth for the coat, we got steel for the machine parts, and you know, glass for like the eye, and then, you know, possibly wood on the handle, or also on the sheet somewhere here, and stuff like that. And if the values of everything go all the way up to full white, it's kind of going to start looking the same. It's going to look like it's entirely made out of one material, and more often than not, then that material starts looking like plastic. At least in my art, you know, if I start giving everything the exact same shine, it's going to start looking plastic. So I tend to avoid the full whites and also the full blacks for the same reason, among others. Not too bad, by the way. purposefully just leaving this leg in the back here with not as much detail. Possibly I could add just a little bit of shading, but we have to be careful here because it's going in the back. It's really not showing off as much of the design as we wanted to. We're showcasing the front, and anything that goes further back or goes behind, some of your main shapes, it's best to leave that not too contrasted and not too detailed. Sort of give the eye a reason to focus on anything else. Something you've made. Like in any case, it's always most likely the face. See, people, we like to focus on the face. Anything we see, whether it's in real life, whether it's in a movie, we tend to look for focal points, and we find that in the face. We're genetically designed to recognize the face, because the first thing you want when you see some creature in the wild is to know what it's thinking, or if it's looking at you. So you look at where the face is. You try to find any features that may tell you that it has a face, because there's some pretty weird animals out there. You look at a snail or like a caterpillar, you're not quite sure where the face is, but it's got to have one. Of course, some creatures don't, but the ones that do, we generally do focus on the face, and it's very important that the face is always one of your most detailed parts of your drawing. That includes, by the way, machines, not just living creatures, because in this case, again, if, say, this design didn't have the head and the eyes were possibly, let's give this a try. Let's showcase it. So it doesn't have a head, and the eyes, what if they were these things here or something? And then there's 4 of them, right? How would we know? How would we know that's the eyes? We're not really designing this all too well. If the eyes are just hidden in this way, unless that's the point, unless it's a horror game, again, scary things are things we've never seen before. The unknown is the scariest. But generally, as soon as they see a humanoid figure, the player, as soon as he sees a humanoid figure, he's going to be looking up at his head, and he's going to want to recognize some kind of facial structure. The weirder, your concept is, the weirder the game you're working for is. Of course, you can take some liberty and actually design some freaky faces that no one's ever seen before. But for the general stuff, you're going to want to show us where the face is first. And perhaps this is the point where I just literally go in and start chewing away at all these details, because there's a lot of details to be made. Basically, this is very rough. From close up, we can see it's not exactly too detailed. So the entire rest of this drawing will literally be straightening out details. But even without them, by the way, like this is good enough to showcase when you think about it. You're really giving everyone an idea of what this is. They can clearly see the arms, This is not a fully shaded arm, let's say. This is definitely just a sketch of what the arm should be, but it does give you the rough idea. It does, just show up and say, yep, this is where the shadow will fall, because this is where the main plate will be. Here's what's coming out of it, And then here's the wrist. Obviously, this could be something else. We could always go, let's see, make a new layer here. Instead of this type of hand, we can always go for the, what do you call that? That's a vice, right? It's the, tool that squeezes things. You know, we can always go wild with the machine parts, but I decided to keep it a little bit more humanoid, and he still has 5 fingers or maybe 4, you know, something close to ours. But again, you can have fun with the joints here, as always, where they can be really protruding out. And that's because robots, you know, like I said in the beginning, they try to mimic what we have, but it's much more efficiently designed. They don't need the whole thing. So really, they're like a caricature of a human. They have most of the traits we have, but they have it, well, theirs are twisted into being better versions, let's say. So it's like looking at a sketch of someone's face, you know. You just have a basic idea of where the mouth would be and where the eyes would be, or in this case, one eye. And then, you know, same with any other structure in him. And these little shines, this is a very cheap way, by the way, to just show someone that whatever you're making is made out of steel. You know, steel, metal, and any kind of, you know, hard material that's metallic usually has a very strong contrast between light and dark. And the light is usually just condensed into one point, or like a little stretch of, you know, points across your subject, and you can very easily tell someone, yep, this is metal. This is definitely not made of rock, you know, for example. Now here I'm allowing myself to add more light because this is not steel. Now at this point we would probably be fine. You know, it's around here that I can probably do another shadow pass, like from the big soft shadows. This is something we call ambient occlusion, and it's literally just leaving shadow where you're pretty sure no light can ever reach. So it's just applying a bit of logic here, you know, following the real world. You'd be pretty sure there'd be no light in here if we're going for a standard top-down lighting, which we are in this case. And, you know, any under part, anywhere we see the bottom part of something, we definitely just add shadow there, or some spots in here which are so close to one another they definitely could not receive any of the light that's falling down on this character. Like this, you know, this entire part of the arm is definitely the under part, and it is not facing up at the light source, so we're going to keep it completely dark, completely in shadow. Same with the coat. Once again, I can do a levels pass, maybe even increase the darks a bit, but can't go too dark, because as we know, pure black is bad for us. And this is reaching pure black. It would seem it's pretty close over here if you'll see. So maybe I dial it back up. Instead, I'm gonna do a light pass, another one. I'm just gonna shine at where some of the focal points will be. Number one is definitely the eye. And we said this would be glowing. I kind of forgot about this part, but let's say this glows as the eye does. I can afford to do this very bright light only here in the blade, you know, the sword. It's gonna really receive a lot of that sunlight and or, you know, just top-down lighting. Because the well, weapons, usually the steel that they use, especially for the blades, if something is always lighter, or not always, let's say more often, is definitely lighter than anything else, and it shines a lot brighter. So, you know, just helping the viewer decide if this is steel or not by giving this that extra shine. And then the rest of our robot man, let's say he's made out of darker metal, or he's been painted over, you know, because like after a design is done, you're always going to put a fresh coat of paint on top of it, just like you would to a car or something. Also just making everything darker below. We don't need that much light in the legs at this point. We can basically tell what this is. Just making a copy again of the layer. But what I was saying was we can definitely tell, you know, where this is going. And we don't need this area to be as bright, because top-down lighting usually leaves the bottom part of your character in the darkness, and you're gonna have just a few accent kind of shines on it, and the rest is just gonna fall into very soft shadow. Putting shines here and there. And maybe for the first time in this entire design, I'm using the smudge tool to actually blur this out, because we don't need it to be so active. But everywhere else, you know, I just went sharp with the lights and stuff, so. And show you what I think I'm just about done here, because the rest of this, if it gets really chosen by an art director or something like that, the rest of this would literally be me zooming in and just looking at shapes and, adding shading to them until it slowly becomes as realistic as I need it to be. Because, different IPs, they're going to give you different kind of directions for where they want the art to go. Some of them, like, Fortnite, it's going to be a lot more comic animated style, and then other more grittier ones like Infinite Warfare, like the previous person stated, is gonna definitely want from you to have real gritty, heavy designs that are as real as they can possibly be. But in this case, this is a mix of both, I'd say, because there's a bit of comic book animated style in this whole thing, but there's also some realism to it. And yeah, there you go. It's the robot pirate. So free to take any questions if anyone has any. But at this point,
oh yes, there are plenty of questions.
Oh, nice.
Thank you for the extraordinary showcase of how are you doing the things. It's always a pleasure to see how people are doing their masterpiece in front of our eyes. I mean, from the start, from that pale 2D layer to this image is very nice, it's very great. So basically, I have a couple of questions.
Right.
Okay, so it says, just a second. Suggestions for software, ideally free for a beginner of 2D and 3D modeling. Can you give us that?
Ooh, well, how about this? Free, not so much, but if whoever's asking has any access to anyone's iPad, that'd be great, because Procreate, which is for just Apple devices, is so much better than, as a business plan, is just so much better than Adobe Photoshop, because for Photoshop you have to pay a monthly fee, but for Procreate, you pay once. You pay a single time, and you pay maybe a little bit more than you would pay each month for Photoshop, and you have the program forever. It's yours. So I'd say it's a worthy investment. Let's see, free software. I have tried a bunch of the other things quite recently, by the way. Let's see what became free. Sketchbook Pro, I think, or maybe not the Pro version, but definitely Sketchbook. I think it went full free. It's a software that now anyone can use, or at least it was, because I remember I picked it up a few months ago and it was free. I have it on my PC, so quite possibly that could be a very good alternative.
Yeah, so then there's another question regarding to this. Which detail or accessory is most appealing to the players? Oh, this was actually not about the accessory, the drawing board. So which detail or accessory is most appealing to the players? Probably regarding this sketch, this image, or this type of...
This one in particular, or any character. For both, I'd say it's probably the weapon. Like, for me, it's always the weapon. Of course, people are going to look at, like I said, they're really going to focus on the face and a few other key areas. But for me, it's always either the weapon or the hands. That's something in particular that I guess it's up to whoever is looking at it. But when I look at a character's hands, it gives me a lot about their character. Sometimes I don't even have to look at the face. I'll just look at, because that might be what you're looking at throughout the entire game. You're making a concept. I may be making a full character, but what if in the game he's only, third person from the back view? You can't see his face, but you can see his back and you can see his hands very clearly. Or in the other case where it's a first person game, then you're only looking at the hands, right? And the hands they take up like a small percent of your screen at all times if you're running, unless you put your weapon away or something. And yeah, I'd say they're pretty important. They're more important than you think.
Okay. So do you use randomized templates like head, arms, assets, body, weapons to generate new character ideas?
Sometimes, yes. By the way, since I already have like a database of things that I've drawn in the past, sometimes when I need to generate a new character, I just pull up whatever I have because it's not stealing if you're stealing from yourself. And then also there's always going to be a mood board. You guys know what a mood board is. It's basically a giant board filled with images that kind of relate to what you're trying to make. Like if I was actually planning to make this character for real, I would have brought up definitely pictures of like from museums of actual ships, of pirate attire of some kind, weapons, a gun. Here's why I didn't give this guy. I did not give this guy a gun. Here's something that's I probably have to.
He have a grappling hook, so that's basically.
He's got a grappling hook. Yeah, he's good. Yeah. He's probably fine.
Yeah. So do you use the same UI for different devices like desktop or mobile? Especially any suggestions about when you have to use landscape or portrait? I'm trying to translate it from Macedonian. That's why I'm. So, дали го користите истиот UI за различни уреди, особени корисни совети за лендскип портрет доколку има потреба? So probably
this is for the last for the speech before.
Are you sure it's not for? Because I can tell you over here that basically why I have all these interface elements stacked on my left here.
Yeah, you can do that.
Well, it's a weird story actually, because the tablet I'm using, it's not brand new. When I bought it, it was secondhand, and it basically had like a bit of scratches, on its left side right over here. Now you can't see that, but I'm looking at my screen, and I can definitely see on the tablet that it's been kind of scratched off. It's been a lot. It's been drawn a lot right at that spot over there. So I covered it up with the interface, so I don't have to draw over there. Because when I go over that area, the pen doesn't produce any paint. Basically, I touch it and it doesn't recognize that it's been touched by the pen, and that area is kind of numb, and that's why that's why I keep my interface on my left. And I don't know if we're talking landscape and or horizontal view I guess it just depends on what you're drawing, because in this case, if it was horizontal, I guess, and I was making a character, I guess it would be because I would multiply my character and wait, let's see. Let's do this as a showcase. So basically, the C, I just press C and it moves right into the crop tool in Adobe Photoshop, and I stretch it out. Have a much larger canvas now, and when I pick out this color, fill out the entire background. Now this, I imagine, would be the case where I'm giving multiple versions of this, and that's why I'm using horizontal view, where I would have 3 different designs, and I'd be showing them as one big canvas, because that's most of the times that's how you showcase these things, right next to each other, so you can, the art director is playing spot the difference. Spot the 10 differences, or however you call it.
So, what kind of bindings do you use for the UI when working? Yeah, bindings on your keyboard,
right.
or do you have a Stream Deck or something like that?
Well, here's an interesting one. Give me a second. So, when I'm making something, by the way, I don't know if I did this in this process or not, but I have made it on my key bindings so that F4, because it's very accessible, F4 does this. F4 just literally flips the design, so I can check it real quick. Because usually, to flip the design, you'd have to press Control T, you'd have to right click, and you'd have to find flip horizontal to flip it. But the single touch of a button does it so much quicker. And then F5, I use it for the vertical flip. So both of those are definitely something that I recommend for making your process a lot faster and easier. What else? Usually the bindings if you click S, I think Photoshop directs you right to the stamp tool, and I don't use that as much as I use the smudge. So I have rebounded so that every time I click S, I'm going straight to the smudge tool, so I can smudge the brushwork that I have. It's for someone who paints, it's a lot more accessible this way. Because the clone stamp and just most of the stamp tools in Photoshop, they're used to multiply elements or to cover stuff up. Again, it can be used for painting, but not as much as the smudge. The smudge is your second best friend after the brush. in painting programs.
So have you ever worked on a game that is working with a visual editor or code like HTML games or Lua or something like that?
No, I don't think so. Unless we count, and I'm not really sure here because my earlier work, I've done for Studio Punchev. By the way, shout out to Studio Punchev. This is the first place I worked at. Basically, it's an interface-only studio, so we had no idea what code the games that we're, producing UI for are actually using. But most of the projects that I've worked on there are for mobile devices. They're for your phone. So, I don't know if that applies.
Yeah. And the last question, there are more questions, but this is the last one I'm asking because it's cool. Have you ever been given a chance to create the character for a game without the guidelines from a game designer or narrative designer? And what do you prefer having info? Or you experiment? So do you want more info, or you would like to experiment more?
Yeah, well, how about this? Less info is better, because the less they tell you about what they need from a character, the more you get to fill it in, the more you add from yourself. And, for me at least, the more you add from yourself into a design, the better it becomes. Like, when you don't have a client who strictly wants this and that, and if you don't do it his way and you don't do it perfect, it doesn't work. He doesn't take the design or something. It's just not as good. Literally, what the ideal version of this is where they tell you, yeah, well, we need a main character, and they stop there. If they stop there, you can just feel the freedom, but also it can be frightening. Like for beginners, I guess it would be pretty frightening to not know exactly what to do, because if they type main character after that in Google and they start looking at things and gathering references, they'll soon find out they're kind of lost in just how many different main characters you can have, and just how many different kinds there are out there. Sometimes it's very intimidating, but you draw enough and you start to want to draw your own designs. So when you hear main character, or you hear villain or something like that, your overactive imagination already has a bunch of things in mind, so you decide what to pick from your own head and you start building on that.
Cool. So thank you very much, man. Again, it was enlightening to hear you talking and drawing in the same time, and how it became from nothing to something.
I have a question.
Sure. Daniela.
Well, what kind of education do you recommend for getting for being a good character designer, or what kind of education did you
Well, that's a tough one, because it's two different things. See, I have basically high school and academy. I went to art-specific schools. It's national schools of art, so definitely, I went the traditional route where you go through every single bit of school that puts you in direct, contact with these things. But let's say the academy didn't have video game art as a kind of a major,
It's a subject, yeah.
Yeah, it didn't have it as
the classical academy.
Right, yeah, and it only exists as a major. It only exists as a 1.5 year major there. So I had to go through illustration there. The 4 years.
You went to illustration part,
yeah, yes. and then major in computer game art. In my case,
I actually yes. I actually went to the same academy as you, just in the painting department.
Oh, nice!
And yes,
right,
I know
awesome.
the departments. Yes, I know the departments.
Okay,
so
that's enough.
That's another. No.
Yeah.
I thought that I actually thought that he maybe had I don't know, foreigner education in.
No.
I didn't expected him to be from the same school as me.
Don't be judgy. Okay.
Well, yeah. Here's what. Because I actually didn't finish answering this. It's actually way more difficult than that. I'm not sure if I would recommend the academy to.
Don't say this type. Don't say
no,
this.
No.
This kind
yes,
of
I'm also surprised because illustration there is so classical. It's not like he does it. It's completely different.
Yeah, it is, and it's nice to see. You know, it's always nice to look at it from a different angle. And you know, illustration and book design. It got me into comic books, or was the other way around. Actually, comic books got me into that, into illustration. And you know, there's many paths you can go to and from. And I'd say if you want to get to, you know, character art or just being a concept artist in general, I'd say there's a few main ones. One of them would be the traditional, which I mentioned, you know, going through the full school program and, you know, following as closely as possible to that subject which you need to get to at the end. And then the other one would be taking courses, because there's a lot of, you know, I'm not going to mention names, not going to promote anything, but there's a lot of people, even in my country, you know, even in Bulgaria, there's just companies offering, you know, courses, tutorials, basically for like a month or maybe less. Sometimes it's 2 weeks. It can be 2 to 4 weeks, but basically it's a lot of stuff that will get you the crash course information that you need to get into the industry, because usually it's people giving out these lessons. They're people that are working in the industry at the same time. So it's very profitable to just say, spend a month, but get lessons from someone that definitely has a job in this industry right now, doing exactly what you want to do. Then, you know, just listening to the same subject, but only in theory, and staying in class for a very, very long time, going through the academy and stuff like that. Those are two different things. And then you have the real wild cards, you know, the people that can learn from just about anywhere. They can open YouTube, and by the end of the day, they would have picked up a skill. Because there's also a lot of free stuff on you can find, what I'm trying to say is you can find what you need just about anywhere, and no single way out of all of these is wrong. Your path is your path, and you know, the way you walk it, you choose. You get to decide.
So deep, man, so deep. Yeah, we went into the deep. Yeah.
And basically, yeah, the reason like I couldn't afford to actually you know, go off country somewhere, you know, have a foreign higher education is I'm poor. I'm literally poor. You know, sometimes you don't have the option. So you stick around in your own country, and you put in the work, and you meet the right people. You end up being exactly where you want it to be from the get-go.
Cool. I think this is a great way to end this.
Yeah, this is very
stream,
thank you for the advice.
Inspiring. So once again, you can find Black Sea Games on their website, blackseagames.com. They're always hiring, and if you wanna be Simon's co-worker, you just go there and show your resume, yeah. And maybe someday you will work on the Knights of Honor second part, the Sovereign, or any other games that you are, or anything else that you are doing. So thank you again.
For the conference.
Yeah. So thank you again. Have a great evening.
Very nice.
And we are going with the final thoughts. Bye from me, Simon. I will remove you now from the view.
All right.
Дечки, фала ви многу на сите што не гледавте и што гледавте. Тоа беа Александар и Симеон. Мислам дека добро почна првиот ден во однос на предавањата. Имавме некои ситни запирки во однос на платформата. Следниот пат ќе направиме уште подобра комбинација за да може без регистрација да се гледа и така натаму, но техничките работи оставете ги на нас. Следната среда од 6 часот имаме нови две теми интересни, а тоа е саунд дизајн. Првиот говорник ќе биде Илија Цветковски, кој што работи во моментов како саунд дизајнер во Crazy Labs. Претходно има искуство работејќи во Snowball. Пред тоа има работено на филмови. Мислам дека ќе биде интересна презентација. И потоа имаме една исто така предавање, говор од еден ветеран македонски во нашата земја во однос на игри, и тоа зборам за големи игри. Тоа е Дајана Димовска, која што ќе ни збори за game production и ќе ни збори за, односно од позиција на CEO на Indium Play, односно co-CEO на Napno Games. Они имаат издадено неколку одлични игри као first party developer за PlayStation. ќе ни збори за тоа искуство, така што не заборавајте од утре ќе ги отвориме регистрациите за следната среда, а вие што сте регистрирани до сега ќе ви известиме и ќе ве пингнеме кој ќе дојде моментот за следниот стрим. Така што од мене добра ноќ. Деко Марков е нашиот транслейтер на знаковен јазик. Деко, фала ти многу, те измачивме со техникали, но се надам дека и тебе не ти беше толку тешко, ти беше забавно како на нашо ни беше.
Да, супер беше.
Точно.
Фала ти, Даниела, фала ти на тебе. Се гледаме, се слушаме.
Да, се гледаме.
Чао, дечки. Се гледаме во среда.